All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August meeting of the Urban Design Commission. We'll call the meeting to order. Any announcements?
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Urban Design Commission. If you can please take your seats. Good morning. Welcome to the Urban Design Commission meeting for Thursday, August 20th. The Urban Design Commission requires a quorum of 6 members to be present and available for voting. The members present today are Chairman Benner, Commissioner Carr, Commissioner DuBose, Commissioner Halliday, Commissioner Harrier, Commissioner Hughes, Commissioner Moss, and Commissioner Reed. Did I miss anyone? All right. Staff present today are Andres Hernandez, Laura Young, Jacqueline Ingram, Caleb Olson, Chris Austria, Francisco Vega, and Sandy McKell, and myself, Joseph Laws. Today's meeting and docket can be found online at www.fortworthtexas.gov. Speaker registration forms must have been turned in prior to the start of the meeting. Attendees can sign up to speak by completing the paper form outside or scanning the QR code on the door. Today's public hearing is documented by cable television and video conferencing recording, which will be available on the city's website. To achieve a timely and orderly meeting, the UDC requests that the following rules of procedure be respected. Number 1, each case will be called in the sequence listed on the agenda unless otherwise directed by the chair. Number 2, all ensuing dialogue shall be directed only to the UDC. Number 3, staff presentation. After staff presentation, the applicant and any other proponents will be given a total of 7 minutes to speak. Opposition may then speak for 7 minutes. Continuation beyond the speaker's allotted time will be subject to the chair's sole discretion and approval. Number 4, speakers may come to the podium to my left, the commission's right, to give their presentations and to speak. All their meeting procedures will adhere to the UDC adopted rules of procedure to the extent practicable. Number 6, following the official close of each case hearing, the UDC will remain in open session to discuss and vote upon the item in question. During this time, no further public testimony or commentary will be allowed unless directed by the chair. Number 7, a closed executive session may be held with respect to the posted agenda items to enable the UDC to receive advice from legal staff. For additional information on any case on today's agenda, you can contact Development Services by calling 817-392-8000. Thank you for your attention and welcome to the Urban Design Commission meeting for August 20th. Mr. Chair, will you please call this meeting to order?
I will call to order. Welcome, everybody. Any announcements?
I had one quick one. Just wanted to say that, don't want to get it wrong here. So the AIA is celebrating its, AIA Fort Worth is celebrating its 80th anniversary on Saturday, August 29th at Acme Brick headquarters. It's from 5:30 to 7 o'clock and should be fun, maybe.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We have one from staff, and this is kind of an announcement / informal discussion with the commission. October UDC is scheduled for October 15th. Texas chapter of the American Planning Association is having its state conference in Irving from the 14th to the 16th. So we have a number of staff who are interested in attending, and we figure some of you all might want to attend as well as some of our applicants. The conference is scheduled from the 14th to the 16th. It's in Irving, so it's relatively local. It's a good opportunity for us to get our professional development, continuing education requirements satisfied. So I wanted to just kind of gauge temperature with the UDC, if there'd be any opposition to moving UDC back a week, keep it on the same day, October 22nd, or the same day of the week, Thursday, October 22nd, same time. We would just kind of bump back that week.
I will not be able to attend. That would bump into another meeting that I have.
Okay. Yeah, and you can feel free to follow up with us by email. I don't think we need a vote from the Urban Design Commission. I just kind of wanted to start that discussion. So if commissioners, if you could check your calendars afterwards, we can send up a follow-up email about it too, just to try to balance all those needs and events.
Yeah, that'd be helpful so everybody can check their calendars. I would be supportive of it. I can make it the next week, but make sure everybody else can as well.
Cool.
I have one. District 11 is going to be having a food and diaper drive this Saturday from 10 to 1 o'clock at the Eugene McCray Community Center off of 4932 Wilbarger. It's for anybody.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the July meeting?
Move approval.
This is Commissioner Carr, I second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July from Commissioner DeBose and a second from Commissioner Carr. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 8-0. All right. First up on the agenda today, we have a busy agenda. I think it's a good amount and some really cool cases to present to you. We have a continued case from last time. We had put it on the agenda last time. There was an issue with the noticing, and we had received some late legal advice. So after it was noticed, we kind of assessed all that and spoke with the applicant, decided it would be best to continue the case to this month. So we fixed those issues. The case is largely the same. It's also allowed the applicant to provide some more time to fine-tune their proposal. So the case is UDC 128, 2026-128 at 2458 Ellis Ave. It's kind of a big one. The applicant's requesting a certificate of appropriateness for structured parking in the stockyards. This is in the transition neighborhood mixed-use district, and there's 6 waivers associated with it. Waiver number 1, waiver from the street-facing building length requirements to allow building length along Ellis Ave of up to 189 feet, where maximum building length is limited to 150 feet per facade. Waiver number 2, the building material from the building material standards to allow synthetic scored stucco to be a primary material, where synthetic scored stucco is limited to being a secondary material within the transition neighborhood mixed-use district. Number 3, waiver from the ground floor transparency requirements to allow 10% transparency along Ellis Ave frontage and 25% along Northwest 25th Street, where a minimum of 40% ground floor transparency is required. Waiver number 4, waiver from the parking setback standards to allow minimum parking setback of at least 7 feet along Ellis and 12 feet along Northwest 25th Street, where a minimum ground floor parking setback of 30 feet is required. Waiver number 5, a waiver from the building entrance spacing standards to allow entrance spacing of up to 177 feet along the western facade of Ellis and 86 feet along the northern entrance facade of Northwest 25th Street, where entrances shall be at least every 75 feet. Waiver number 6, waiver from the height encroachment standards to allow rooftop stair access to be 0 feet from the edge, or at least 10 feet from the edge of the roof is required. I know that's a whole lot. We're going to spend some time today kind of going through the proposal and the waiver requests and the code intent. The kind of bottom line to this is that the ML Letty's Boot and Clothing Store, which is a 100-year-old company, it's been in the stockyards for many, many years. They're at the corner of Exchange and North Main. They are taking a lot they own that's kind of behind their primary building at the intersection of Ellis and Northwest 25th Street that's currently used for surface parking, and they want to do structured parking garage. So their proposal is for a 296 space, 4 to 5 story structured parking garage, cast in place garage with ground floor retail. So they're adding 240 spaces of parking to this site. Now, one important thing is that the applicant has obtained a conditional use permit for the structured parking use. Structured parking is not allowed by right in the stockyards. It's one of those things we want to kind of tightly control so we don't get a district full of structured parking garages. So they obtained the conditional use permit on June 9th of this year without time limit via ZC 26054. So today, the UDC is really only looking at the design aspects, not the use, okay? The use has already been through zoning commission and city council and is approved. So to dive into the site, this is a 0.64 acre site at the corner of Northwest 25th Street and Ellis Avenue. It's currently surface parking with 53 surface parking spaces and 3 small vacant commercial buildings along Northwest 25th Street. One important thing to this site is that there is a 12-foot change in grade from one end of the site to the other. So that is one of the things that's triggering a lot of these waiver requests, and the applicants had to factor that into their design. The applicant has also worked very strongly with Fort Worth Stockyards, Inc. They were one of the first projects to go in front of the Fort Worth Stockyards, Inc. Design Review Committee in March 26, March 2026. And the DRC had a robust discussion with the applicant about the proposed use and design of the project. At that time, they were going through that conditional use permit process. And Fort Worth Stockyards, Inc., DRC, was generally supportive of the project. The Fort Worth Stockyards, Inc. board similarly was supportive of the project, but they didn't choose to write a letter of support for the project. The applicant does have 3 letters of support from the Fort Worth Chamber, Historic North Side, and I believe Hispanic Chamber are the 3. So those should be on the tablets if you want to read those. All right, here's an aerial just to kind of orient you to the site. I did this for the conditional use permit zoning case, but it gives a good aerial so you can see kind of where this site is relative to some of the surrounding. I used a very kind of base zoning commercial district guides to tell you kind of what's around it. But it's across the street from some surface lots. There's also a police station to the northwest, and then to the south is Exchange and North Main Street, which are 2 main commercial retail corridors. And here's some site pictures of the site. You can see the surface parking today and the single-story vacant commercial buildings. And as you can see on the picture on the left, this is directly north of the Cadillac Building, which is a prominent historic building in the Stockyards. All right, so let's kind of dive into some more details about the proposal itself. Again, it's a 4 to 5 story, 296 space, cast in place structured parking garage with at least 2,000 square feet of ground floor retail along Northwest 25th Street. You can see it there at the corner underneath the bronze canopy. The building is up to 52 feet in height. The top deck, the top floor plate, is open air parking as well, so you will be able to park on there. The parapet walls range from 3 to 5 feet, so most of the headlights will be screened at that level. There are rooftop elevator and stairwell towers that extend 12 to 14 feet beyond the top floor plate. That's an allowable height encroachment per the code according to the height. There's a waiver as to where exactly they're placed within the roof. And the applicant also does have rooftop lighting that's at 15 foot, which is the max that you can have for the height encroachment. And we've worked with them on adjusting the color temperature and the placement of those lights, and they've done a lot of photometric analysis to limit light trespass. As you can see here, the ground story is a brick facade, and then the upper levels are synthetic scored stucco, EIFS, and some aspects of the second floor also incorporate a metal louver design to add some variety to the facade. On the ground floor, fenestration is transparency, so it's glass glazing, mostly along Northwest 25th Street. On the upper floors, it ends up being an open air kind of mesh. That's for garage circulation of the air. On the facade, the applicants incorporated pilaster columns, window lintels and mullions, as well as cornice moldings into the stucco for architectural detail and relief. The applicant's also incorporating some artistic elements. They have some large cowboy boot / Western clothing themed imagery to play to that kind of character and ethos of the Stockyards and help break up some of the larger blank walls they have. And the applicants also looked into some possible whitewash murals. They haven't presented plans yet, but they're exploring opportunities for that at various points on the project. One of the things you'll see about this is going to probably be one of the nicest garages you ever see. We'll go into some of the site analysis later, but the applicant really endeavored to design a 4 facade building here, even though the building only has 2 actual street frontages. And then lastly, the applicant did, do a number of public realm improvements. You can see the street trees, you can see the pedestrian lights of the red Washington style that's known throughout the Stockyards. They've also added really robust sidewalk widths and incorporated some dark bronze metal canopies that look very nice. So we'll go into some of the plans in detail here. Here's the site plan. You can see the garage relative to the proposed street trees, the ped lights that are on there. One thing to note on the staff report and some of the slides, you may see brick pavers or stamped concrete pavers for parking within the street outside the curb. After discussions with TPW, Transportation Development Services, we're getting rid of that. It's just going to be regular concrete. We're not going to do anything fancy. There's some challenges to implementing the Stockyards form-based code and what they require, particularly coordinating with TxDOT and TPW for changes between the curbs. But you can see here from the site plan, there's entries into and out of the garage off Northwest 25th Street and off Ellis, and then there's an entry off the alleyway as well. Here's a color rendering of the site, so you can see kind of how it sits within the surrounding context. You can see the surface parking to the north and to the west of the site. And here's the basic floor plan of the ground floor. One thing to note is the retail space is this area here at the northwest corner of Northwest 25th Street and Ellis. So they're trying to activate that corner through that retail frontage. And here's the upper floors. It's largely it's a parking garage. It's largely the same floor plan. But you can see the top level, the roof plan. You will be able to park on that top level as well, get all the way up to there. So here's a northern facade, gives you a good sense of how the building is going to look. You can see that brick base and then the stucco kind of middle part and then the cap where they have that cornice molding. The applicant was very intentional about trying to vary the parapet wall heights to give the feeling more of an organic look, make it seem like the block was built out over time, not just in one bit. And then here's the west facade. This is along Ellis. Architect did a similar thing of trying to incorporate architectural detail and break the facade up into different elements. So there's the element on the left, there's the middle element, and this, what you see right here, that's that metal louver panel that I mentioned before. They're trying to add different materiality to different elements of the facade, and you can see how they're incorporating that cowboy boot in stucco relief there as well. And then this is the facade from the alley. So I'm going to show you some pictures later on. They've done a number of massing analysis to see where the building is viewable. And I mentioned before a 4-facade building. The applicant's trying to make sure that from any spot where this is visible from the public right away, they're treating it with appropriate architectural detail. Then here's the side, the southern facade. This abuts the Cadillac building, so most of this is concealed. And they had to fire rate this wall just given the proximity to the buildings to the south. So again, here's the rendering from the corner of Ellis and 25th Street. Here's the rendering from the corner of Exchange and Ellis. You can see the Cadillac building to the front with those lovely plywood windows. And there is some pretty significant grade change as you head north down Ellis. It decreases in elevation pretty substantially. So the parapet wall kind of steps down in accordance with that change in elevation. The height of the building relative to the Cadillac building was something that the applicant looked at. The building itself is 6 to 9 feet above the top of the parapet wall of the Cadillac building on that southwest corner. So it's a little bit taller than the Cadillac building, but relatively comparable in height. And this is their massing analysis and their renderings from the corner of North Main and Exchange. And I'll be very honest with you, I had some blunt conversations with the applicant. I'm like, you need to consider the view from this key intersection, because it's not just a key intersection of the district, but probably the whole city. So you can see the Letty's boot store in the front. The garage is largely not viewable, minus this little bit right there from this intersection. So that's something that was thoroughly studied through this proposal when looking at the height and all the other elements. This is the view from North Main. Directly north of the Letty's store, there's a small parking lot that connects to the alley. So again, here you're seeing that changing grade as it steps up, moving west. So it creates this axial view, and the applicant tried to treat this as kind of a view opportunity up to be able to look at something that's really quite good looking, kind of directs your eye up as the elevation goes up. And then this is the view from the corner of Northwest 25th Street and North Main. So at this point in the street, there's kind of like an opportunity where you can step down steps into Marine Creek. But at this point, partly because of the change in elevation, you see here the street kind of goes up. It's very, very viewable. The buildings along North Main that you see, the Rios building and the tattoo parlor, those are 1 to 2 story buildings. But because of the change in elevation, this garage looks substantially larger than that, even though the height is all allowed by right. One thing to note, staff noted this and the applicant brought it up as well, there is another prominent building that's also zoned Stockyards transition neighborhood mixed use, the courtyard at the corner of 26th and North Main, which uses a similar material pattern where they have the brick at ground level and then the stucco above. So this is a good building to understand conceptually what the applicant's doing with some of their material choices and how it might look and play within the district. And the applicant also did a lot of research about the local history of the site. So the alleyway between Northwest 25th Street and Exchange is actually dedicated to someone named Letta Smotherman, who was a burger cook within the district, and there's a lot online about her. She was there for quite a while, so you can see the videos online about her, but the applicant's gonna be restoring this sign, and they're thinking about how they can preserve this story and this history through possibly some murals or other design elements. All right, so now I want to look at the waivers because we got a big list of waivers. Usually we try to reduce the waivers as much as possible. Due to the use, the change in elevation across the site, the applicant tried to reduce waivers, but there were some that they struggled to design their way out of. The first relates to building length. So the code has a building length requirement of 150 feet in length. Along Ellis Ave, the length is 189 feet. Part of the intent behind this standard is to make sure that the code limits or controls large monolithic buildings that look out of scale and are not really historically appropriate with the district. Most of the stockyards, you see these smaller scale buildings that were just built out incrementally over time. The lots in the core are significantly smaller plats, so the buildings kind of correlate to that. The applicant has one platted lot that they have. So part of the reason why they need to that extended length is because of the parking ramps. They need to achieve the vertical clearance necessary to be able to ramp up to the next level, and it just kind of follows the whole site as a whole. And to address this concern, the applicant I'll go back to this one. The applicant tried to vary the facade, creating different elements as you move north and south along the facade, particularly along Ellis. You see to the north, they have this kind of brown that wraps around the corner there. Then there's this middle block with the metal louvers. And then there's the southern bit with the cowboy boot and the varied parapet wall height. So they tried to break up some of the massing using facade variation and the shifts in parapet wall. Next waiver relates to building materials. So in the Stockyards form-based code, there's a list of building materials, and then there's approved secondary and primary materials by sub-district. Within the neighborhood transition mixed use, synthetic scored stucco is an approved secondary material, which is defined as a material used on less than 25% of the facade. For this design, they're using it significantly more than 25%. The applicant's here and can speak more to this, but they relayed concern about using masonry up the whole facade, about concerns for cracking, particularly since you have these large vehicles having heavy impact on that ground plate. And then they pointed to the courtyard at the corner of 26th and North Main as a comparable example of what they were looking to do. I also want to note, too, that synthetic scored stucco is an allowed primary use in 2 other transition districts, North 40 and Northern Edge. So if you were building within the broader transition district, you would be able to use synthetic stucco as a primary material within those 2 districts. All right. Third waiver, looking at ground floor transparency, 40% is required by the code, and some of the intent is just to create a good urban building that allows for engagement from the inside of the building to the outside and from the public realm in. Part of their challenge with this site was the change in grade to doing this and having the parking ramps here. So the curb ramps up as you move south, but you can see they have the entry on the left here. That ramp on the interior actually comes up to this level, and then the floor plate is above that ground floor commercial. So the curb and the parking ramp are sloping in opposite directions. And you know, historically in this district, you wouldn't necessarily see ground floor transparency all the way down to the floor. You usually have some kind of kick plate or something there. And would just kind of create an awkward interior perspective to have this triangular window kind of shoved up there. And from the outside, you'd be looking at the tires of cars on the ramp. One thing with the calculation for ground floor transparency as well, we did not include the parking entries in those calculations. They take up about 10% of the facade. The reason is, since the intent of the transparency, part of the intent is to make sure that people inside can look out. No one's going to be standing in the vehicular entry looking out because they'd get hit by a car. We did count the windows on the upper floors towards the transparency because you could be standing inside and safely look out. Those are metal graded, again, to allow for that open air circulation with the outside, given the garage. All right. Looking at the parking setback waiver, so the intent behind the parking setback waiver is to make sure that along the public realm, it's not lined with vehicles and you got someone with their F-250 revving up right next to someone who's trying to walk down the street on a casual Friday evening date. So the intent behind the parking setback is to push the parking further away from the right-of-way, also create some opportunities for ground floor commercial, which the applicant has included some within their proposal. Now, they do have parking here along Ellis and then here along Northwest 25th Street. Currently, there is parking here on the surface lot along Ellis. It is unscreened. It is right up to the right-of-way. The applicant's actually pushing that parking further back, and they're screening it with the wall. So even though some of the condition is still retained, it is getting improved by pushing it further back from the right-of-way and screening it. So even if there is a vehicle inside with their headlights, the person walking down the sidewalk isn't going to be blinded or hear necessarily the person inside cranking up the car radio. All right, entrance spacing. So the code requires pedestrian entrance spacing at least every 75 feet. Part of this is to make sure that along the pedestrian realm of commercial areas, there's opportunities for people to enter and exit the private space. So on the northern facade, they were about 86 feet, 85 by some measures in terms of pedestrian entrance spacing. So they're right at the cusp of us being able to administratively approve that. But you can see here, part of that's driven by the need to create enough space for the vehicular drive to come through on the north. And then on the west, you have the pedestrian entrance on the south, and then partly because of the change in elevation, the garage slope ramp, there really wasn't much of an opportunity to put in a second pedestrian entrance, and the only way to really do that would have been to do a kind of circuitous ramp either into the public right-of-way or into the building, which would have disrupted a lot of the traffic flow and eaten up a lot of space. And on this wall, the applicant has mulled adding some muralage or something else to kind of create a more engaging pedestrian realm. We've had some nascent discussions about that. The letter person who I brought up before has been a subject of conversation for potential future murals as well. And then for the height encroachment, you can see on the plans, it's a little bit hard to see. So there's elevator stairwells in the northeast and southwest. Those are up against the edge of the building, and the code requires them to be 10-foot setback. So some of the intent of this is just to make sure that, you know, all along the frontage, you're not getting an accentuated building form. So they're trying to limit that. This is relatively limited. On the southwest side, this is adjacent to the Cadillac building, which is already a pretty tall building. And then on the north is some of the shortest parts of the building when you measure from curb level up, so the effect is not as great. But overall, I think it's, you know, putting them at the edge also allows enough room for vehicular circulation. Moving it in would actually push some of that parking further to the edge in exchange for that. So this helps to keep some of the parking closer to the interior, further from the right-of-way. Then lastly, in the staff report, I listed a number of key urban design considerations. I just wanted to point out this is a pretty substantial project. It's going to be hard to miss in the stockyards. The first relates to building mass. As shown before, the applicants carefully analyzed how this building is going to fit in within the broader urban context, and how it's going to be experienced from these key intersections throughout the district. From the intersection of Exchange and North Main, it's not really visible from the intersection. From looking at it from Ellis and Exchange, it's pretty comparable in height to the Cadillac building you can see here on the right. You know, it is very visible from the corner of Northwest 25th Street and North Main, but the applicant attempted to address that by treating that facade as if it were a frontage facade. Another urban design consideration that was noted in the staff report was the lighting. So this building will have lighting on top of the roof deck that extends 15 feet up, which is the allowable height encroachment amount. They've done a lot of photometric analysis to limit light spillage beyond the property line, and that lighting on the roof deck is going to be at a temperature of 2,700 Kelvin, so it's a nice warm light that's historically appropriate. It kind of looks like that high pressure sodium lighting that, you know, is contextually appropriate for a historic district like the Stockyards. And then lastly, the applicant is trying to preserve some of that very local history of the Letter Smotherman plaque. So they're rehabbing that plaque, and they're going to make sure that it's on the alley, so that's preserved for the future. All right, and then in the staff report, one thing we also did as well was look at the project in context of the spirit and intent of the code. That's an initiative that we as staff are trying to consider. Really think, what's the policy intent, and how does this project meet or not meet that intent? And the Stockyards Code does a good job of verbalizing two primary points of intent. The first is balancing the historic preservation with development, and then the second is to achieve design excellence in the built environment. And the various design details the applicant proposed, such as retaining the parallel frontage, using appropriate materials, analyzing the height and limiting the height next to the Cadillac building, thoroughly visualizing the building from various key historic areas within the district, and using details such as high pressure sodium level lighting, or not really level lighting, but temperature lighting, you know, helps to advance that first intent of balancing the historic preservation with development. And for the second intent of achieving design excellence in the built environment, a lot of those same aspects apply, but also just their measure of architectural detail through the pilasters, the window lintels, the mullions. And then for one thing that was listed in the code when it comes under achieving excellence in the built environment, it talks about balancing pedestrian and vehicular needs, and that verb balancing is the verb that's listed in the code. So that's what this project tries to do by having sidewalks that are larger than what is required by the code, but then also having points where the vehicles can enter and exit the drive. So given all the above, staff is recommending that the applicant's request for a certificate of appropriateness for structured parking in the Stockyards Neighborhood Transition Mixed Use District with waivers for street-facing building length, waiver for building material standards, waiver from the ground floor transparency requirements, waiver from the parking setback, waiver from the building entrance spacing standards, and waiver from the height encroachment standards be approved. And I've talked too much. The applicant's here, Forward Stockyards Inc. is here, and I'm sure you all have a lot of questions.
Thank you, Joe. Great job on this one. Any questions for staff?
We, so the Stockyards Form-Based Code does have some lighting standards to it, particularly related to CRI levels, which they're in compliance for, and fixture detail. So you can't have flood lighting and things like that. It has to be full cutoff. They're in compliance with the aspect of the Stockyards Code for that, and they've even provided photometric analysis too. The city does not have any dark sky policies. As an urban design person, I would love that, and I think that's a huge opportunity, but it's outside the bounds of this specific case discussion. There's a lot of opportunities, particularly as the city continues to grow, and it's, things like lighting detail, color, temperature can play a huge role in urban form, particularly as we experience urban spaces at night. The best example is always Paris. They very, very tightly monitor their lighting temperature. Usually it's 3K and below, and it works pretty well for their tourism industry. So it's an opportunity for us as a city to look into. Yes, this is a fee-for-service garage. So it's well beyond anything that would be applicable for just the Letty's store itself. And in terms of the use, it went through that conditional use permit process for a structured parking garage. If the parking garage is clearly accessory to the primary use, it's allowed by right. But when the primary use becomes parking open to the public where you can pay and then get in, that becomes its own standalone primary use.
Yeah, any other questions for staff? All right, is the applicant here to speak?
Yes. And they have a presentation too. I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah, good morning. Please state your name and the city in which you reside.
Can y'all hear me?
No, not yet.
Nope. Can I just yell?
There we go.
I don't think
There
there
it
we
is,
go.
yeah.
Okay. I love these mics. Good morning. I'm Shannon Bearden. I reside in Fort Worth, Texas. I am an architect at Dunaway. I am here on behalf of the applicant, which is Emma Letty's, the Franklin family, and Parking Systems of America. Let's see. We do have a presentation. Joe did a phenomenal job going through everything. I don't want to reiterate everything that he said, so I will try to speed through this. You guys have been listening to us for almost an hour now, right? So it is important for me to let you guys know that the Franklins have owned, Emma Letty's and the Franklins, in conjunction with Parking Systems of America, have owned and operated this surface parking lot for decades. Over 50 years now. It has always been a surface parking lot. Prior, in the early 1900s, it was a lumber yard, but small, little 1,000-square-foot building, and then parking around that. Later, the retail buildings that you see in the corner came online, but those have largely been vacant for many years, or they have been low-rent spaces. I think everyone is oriented with where the surface parking lot is now off of Main and Exchange. It's really a background site. The site itself is going to maintain ingress and egress as it does today. One entry off of Main, which is ingress only. We are keeping it that way. And then ingress egress off of Ellis. We are adding an entry and exit off of Northwest 25th, and that is to help with traffic congestion in the area. Joe mentioned that we're also adding this 2,000 square foot retail space. That is to replace the retail buildings that we are taking offline that front Northwest 25th today. Okay, and you guys have seen these renderings, but there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out as we walk through these. Joe mentioned that it was intentional for us to make sure that this did not look like one large monolithic building, that it looked like three separate buildings that could have been brought online over time, that we were very intentional with the materials that we looked at and making sure that it fit the district. It felt natural to the historic nature of the district as well. and that we provided a positive pedestrian experience for those that would be using this building and exploring the stockyards, coming and visiting those that live here as well. The Family and Parking Systems of America has always maintained that this building needed to be something that they could be proud of, that it would be a legacy type building. It would go with the heritage of their building that they have owned for over 100 years, and something that they could pass down to their generations of kids. But it could be something that they would be really proud of, that could help serve the district and help eliminate or alleviate the parking congestion that is in the stockyards. Something that was not shown on the map to the west, there is residential neighborhoods, and we have done drone studies, and then there was a 2023 traffic study that was commissioned by the city of Fort Worth that showed congestion continuously feeds into those neighborhoods, and that impacts the people that live there. So part of this is to help provide for the continuous amount of people that are coming to visit the stockyards. We know that last year there was 11 million people, and that number is continuing to grow year over year, which that is a substantial amount of people visiting, and we are happy to have that success, but we need to help, and this project is doing just that. This is a view off of Main Street, looking towards that ingress-only drive. The Letty's building is on the left. The Rios Furniture Store is on the right. This drive currently exists today. It is parallel parking, as you see. There is a small little brick enclosure you can kind of see on the left-hand side in front of the garage that we are adding that will serve electrical yard. So we'll have a switchgear and 3 transformers. We are taking all of the Encore overhead power lines and taking them underground. So we are cleaning up the skyline within this area, and we are helping our neighbors with relocating and upgrading all of their electrical on this block. So that'll go to the Rio store, Letty's, and then all of the retail establishments that are already on Exchange. And this enclosure has already been approved by the Historic Commission because this little piece is in the historic district, and the garage itself is in the transition zone. Okay, so you saw the site plan that Joe put up here. We have updated this one to remove the brick paving, so this is resembles exactly what will be with the built product. On the building length, Joe went into detail, and the code itself, you guys already know, was not established for a parking garage. And in order for us to make the parking garage work with the ramps and codes and heights that we need for vehicles and pedestrians to be able to go through the garage, we need the length of at least 185 feet and a width of at least 125 feet. We are slightly over that with the articulation of the building and the pilasters at around 186 feet. But again, we have intentionally made the building design to look as though it's not one monolithic building. And we've taken careful consideration in what the public realm would look like and how people would experience it as they walk by the building. So we are asking for a waiver on the length of the building. Joe mentioned the materials. This is the graph highlighting the 3 districts that do allow stucco as a primary. We are asking that we can use stucco above the ground floor level more than 25% of the building. There are 3 other examples of buildings within the transition district that are similar, that use a different material other than masonry brick as a primary. This will also help the use of our garage. Garages have a lot of movement in them with vehicles traveling through them. They tend to move. They need to move. They need to be able to shift, and stucco provides a better material with less cracking over time, easier to maintain, if other than doing brick the whole way up the building. It also helps give it a different look and feel that is similar to what you would find throughout the Stockyards district. On the transparency, again, the garage openings themselves, the driveway entries, do not count towards our total calculation. So we are only able to use what we can provide with the amount of glazing that you can get on the ground floor. And Joe mentioned we have the 10 to 12 foot steep slope, east and west and north and south on our site. So it is quite unique and an interesting situation to work with. But we did several studies to look at the best possible options to lay out this garage with the ramps and putting retail in an appropriate location. We tried to put it all along Ellis. That was not possible without creating an experience that would not work for a pedestrian with the amount of retaining walls that would be needed and ramps and stairs. So that is why we do have that blank wall along Ellis, where we have suggested that we will put a vintage wash mural. There are several murals that existed in the stockyards, particularly on the Letty's building, that can no longer be seen, and we would like to move those over to this building to help with that character of what was once there. And then with the Mrs. Smotherman and her mural that we are putting on the building and the dedication plaque, we are remaking that. There is also a star, a Hall of Fame star, that is in the sidewalk that we are going to preserve and put back. So that will remain in front of the retail spot on the building. Okay, parking setback. This is a surface parking lot today. Parking is all along the street. We are asking to do the same thing, but within this garage footprint. We are screening the parking spaces. We are making sure that the headlights are not visible. Most vehicles are 24 to 30 inches of headlight height. Our screening starts at 30 inches. So 90% of the vehicles should be screened unless it's a large lifted or F-250 large truck that you mentioned. There are 2 spaces along Northwest 25th that you will be able to see the vehicles because they are behind that glass storefront. The door spacing, again, looking at what worked best for entering the retail space, that is the flattest level of entry space and grade that we can maintain where that door is currently shown on Northwest 25th. We have to maintain the slope of the sidewalk and the street as it exists today. And so that is where that door can be placed, and that puts us at 85 feet instead of the 75 feet. And then we've talked about the Ellis Avenue elevation. That would be below ramp and also below grade. So if we did put a door or a window, you would be looking at dirt. The height of the building. So the majority of the building is less than 50 feet, and our neighboring building, Cadillac, is at 48 feet. The stair tower adjacent to Cadillac is 6 feet taller, and then the elevator is 9 feet taller, but that elevator is set back almost 40 feet from the street. So it is pretty far back. If you're on the sidewalk and you look up, you're not going to be able to see it. And then the same thing with those, the light poles on the roof deck. If you look back at the renderings are accurate with the height of the light poles, so you will not be able to see them at a 6-foot eye level from across the street. Okay, and then I have our project schedule. Hopefully I went fast. I did want to address the parking fee. So the surface lot today is pay for park, and the client is not changing the fee. So they're not increasing it. It will remain what it is today. They also have agreements with the neighboring retail locations where they have a discounted rate, and they're going to maintain that as well. Did I miss anything?
One quick question on the ground floor, the screening for headlights for the spots that are on the ground floor. Can you cover that again real quick?
Yes. Let me go back to I think an elevation would work better, which I don't have in here. Okay. There we go. So behind where it says vintage wash mural, there are a couple of vehicle spaces there. So you won't see that because it's behind the brick wall. But as you move up the ramp where the louvers are and the mesh screen, There will be vehicles parked there on that ramp, but the headlights, we were basing the height of those metal panels off of a car that was 24 inches to 30 inches of headlight. So we started the panels at 30 inches. So in theory, you should not see any headlights. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. The only spot where you would see headlights is on that northwest, I don't have a pointer, but the northwest elevation, one of the storefront windows, there are two vehicles that will, thank you, Joe, that will be parked in front of those. You will be able to see those car headlights.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Can you talk a little bit about the vertical window stripes that are directly above the entrances? In the renderings, they look a little bit like dark vertical stripes, but in the elevations, it looks like they're completely open with some sort of a cable rail. Is that right? Sure. So
Those, maybe the elevation is better to look
Pull it up.
But
yeah.
so they are cable rail. There will be a metal panel behind that is attached to that cable rail, so you will not be able to see cars. That area right there that you're looking at is drive aisle. So cars are not parking in front of that, they're driving in front of it, but we are adding that metal panel to block the headlights.
I think it's a thoughtful solution, and there's only, I guess I question whether punched openings at that spot make more sense, just because of the verticality of that on that elevation feels a little bit out of place. And then I guess my only other question, and I know that there's a design decision here, and I think it's probably right, and but there's a street-facing facade, and then there's an alley-facing facade. And so the street-facing facade, as it breaks itself down with sort of 3 modules, is helpful and breaks itself down in scale. But then on the alley-facing facade, it feels as though the building calls attention to itself, where if you look at the adjacent buildings, anything that faces the alley, or that you even called it a backdrop building, Joe. So as a backdrop building, does it really want to call so much attention to itself, particularly this view? As we look at other buildings around in the district, it's a highly articulated facade. It's a pretty facade, but also does it blend itself into the district, and does it make itself sort of, again, a backdrop to these buildings that are in front of it? So again, I applaud the effort and the work. I think it's a nice building. That's a question for the design team, I guess.
I will say that we ran through multiple calculations on our ventilation because we are not mechanically ventilating, so we do need to maintain a large amount of opening for that airflow, which lent itself to the design. But also we were tasked with creating a 4-fronted facade building. And that was intentional because we are not sure in the future if these historic buildings in front of us will ever be built up or changed. And we wanted to make sure that this did have a little bit more of a beautification, if you will, as you enter from the north.
I would just add, from a regulatory perspective, the code talks about facade standards on the frontages. The alley is not a frontage. So worst case, you could have a West Bend style garage on that frontage. So I pushed the applicant pretty hard early on and said, that's not gonna happen here. Because as the rendering shows, it's highly visible. So
We're trying to set a standard for excellence.
Yeah, agreed. And I think maybe even if it was just a tonal thing, in that the the white stucco sort of blended in with the rest of the brick, it would call a little bit less attention to itself, and then sort of a rhythm of punched openings would make a lot of sense. Again, I'm not trying to design the building. All I'm trying to do is just pose a question.
I just have a couple of quick questions for you. On these buildings in this neighborhood, obviously most of the structures are a brick veneer, so there's a certain amount of depth that's associated with that when you have a punched opening. You're using a synthetic stucco on those upper levels. Is the intent to return that synthetic stucco back into that punched opening with the screens and everything slightly set back to show an amount of depth that would be equivalent to what you would have in the surrounding buildings? Is that the design intent? Because the models make it look like it's almost flush with the exterior at this point, which I understand there's a degree of modeling error that goes on there, but I just want to verify that some thought's been given to the ability to actually show that depth and kind of give it that texture that that environment needs.
Yes, sir. That is accurate. We're looking at 2 to 4 inches of depth
Okay.
that would be there, so it does articulate if there was a window there in the past.
And then the second question is the total amount of square footage on the retail component of this on the corner of 25th and Ellis. What is that square footage approximately?
2,000 square feet.
And with that single door opportunity in there, what is the vision for what kind of a tenant would possibly be interested in that space? Because you're also challenged by the fact that part of the building is coming down on one side, the canopy hanging over it is rather low in overall look to the rest of the structure. Has there any thought been given to what signage might look like on something like that, or how you would be able to highlight that corner?
So first question, we've looked at a retail store or an office, and both of those would fit perfectly in that corner. There will not be a food and beverage establishment. At least that's not what we envision and not what we're planning for. As far as signage, we have looked at doing, we can do signage on the canopy or a blade sign off the building.
Quick question for Joe. Do the boots count as signage?
No. There's no commercial copy associated with it, and it's not on the same, the Letty's is not setting up shop front in this building. So we're not considering a commercial copy.
Is it a privately funded project, or are there any city dollars or TIF dollars or anything like that associated with the project? Is that something that we can ask?
It is currently privately funded. There may be an opportunity that some TIF funding has been released that we may try to ask for some public some assistance for the public realm, being the sidewalk, the streets, and the landscaping at the street side.
Any other questions? Thank you, Shannon. Anybody else here to speak in favor?
My name is Paul Payne. Is this still on? Paul Payne. I'm the president of Fort Worth Stockyard, Inc. We office at 222 West Exchange here in Fort Worth in the Stockyards. My past, I think, is pertinent here. I was the president of Near South Side Inc. for 13 years. Stockyards never had the ink, so I was asked by city leadership to establish that up there, and that was what I'm trying to tell you is I brought what we did on the south side for review of projects to the Stockyards that had never happened before. Specific to this project, Stockyard Inc. Was very involved in the process, working with city staff and with the applicant and Dunaway, the architect. So Mayor Pro Tem Flores had a meeting at City Hall to meet with the members of my board. These are business owner, professionals, architects, designers from our development or design review committee, and with the Franklin family city staff. So we were very much a part of the dialogue. So what I'm trying to say is you now have a resource you didn't have 2 years ago in the Stockyards to work with city staff and developers to protect the form-based code in the stockyards and try to work to make sure that we protect the purpose intent of the design in the stockyards and preserve this gem. And that was very much a part of this process. I wanted you to know that the Stockyard Inc. played that role for you. And so you'll see more of me in the future as we have more projects come into the area. And that's really what I wanted you to know. And do you have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion for our discussion. I do want to commend the applicant for going over and above on the design. That costs, not in our purview, but costs design dollars, it's extra cost, materials and construction that has to come from somewhere eventually. So obviously a lot of intentionality. A personal anecdote, I had a lunch at Lonesome Dove a few days ago, and both people I were meeting, this is a weekday lunch, were like 10 to 15 minutes late because they couldn't find parking in the stockyard. So it's obviously needed.
I think generally we don't want to see like 6 waivers, but at least 5 of these waivers are really specific to the use. Some challenges, some site challenges here that to deal with grading, and so in general, for 5 out of the 6, I think the material standards is really the only one that is sort of still up for discussion with the board. Yeah, that would be waiver number 2, and the stucco as a primary material. So to me, that is it's a design decision, and it's impactful, and if we're comfortable with it, then I think we would move forward.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. They've gone above and beyond the call of duty on trying to not only, get the garage to get into a fairly challenging spot with the elevation changes, but also to incorporate some design intent into it, and breaking the building up in the way that they have is very helpful. In that regard, I'd probably be more lenient on the synthetic stucco option as a primary material, just because it appears here to be used much better than any of the other references cases that have been shown. So at this point, I would like to make a motion to approve all 6 of the waivers for this project.
A second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Carr to approve all 6 waivers. Again, that is the waiver from the street-facing building length standards, waiver from the building material standards, waiver from the ground floor transparency requirements, waiver from the parking setback standards, waiver from the building entrance spacing standards, and waiver from the height encroachment standards as listed on the agenda. And a second from Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Carr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner DuBose, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chairman Benner, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Halliday, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Moss, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0. I've been up here way too long. We're going to transition now to new cases. We have a couple urban forestry cases today, urban residential cases. If you want to take a break at any point, just let us know.
Thanks, Joe. We have a couple commissioners,
Stepped out.
still have quorum if you want to keep going.
Yeah. Just because I did hear that a few people have a hard out at noon, so I'm going to try to move through quickly.
Great.
Mine are pretty easy. I do have a quick. No, I'm good. Sorry. Yes. Moving on to E. New cases. So we're doing UDC 2026 190. This is for 2511 Mitchell Boulevard, UFC 260178. I do want to make a correction on the agenda. It went out at 15%, but they are asking, or we are asking, to change that to 0 so that if there is a little bit of change, and I'll walk through it as to why, but just letting you know, changing that to 0, not the 15 that was on the agenda. Applicants are here for a COA for a waiver to reduce the 25% tree preservation requirement to 0%. Okay, so this is an aerial of the subject property. It is at the corner of Mitchell and I don't remember which street that is. Okay, and MLK. There we go. I usually put it on there. So it is E, neighborhood commercial, and this is for the Fort Worth Housing Finance Corporation. Currently, there are some protected trees on site, and if you notice, there's that nice kind of ravine in the middle that then has this as their drainage easement. So due to the grade and the constraints of the site, there is already a natural creek ravine area right here that is going to require substantial grading, and they are going to use this as their drainage easement and then also flow this way. They also have easements along Mitchell and MLK. This is their proposed site plan. They are going to have one building with associated parking, again, that underground drainage, and then planting a good amount of trees back. The reason I changed it from the 15% to the 0%, you can see here, they are preserving trees in all of these spaces, but because of that grading change and the hydrological changes and everything like that, we'd prefer for it to be not marked as preserved canopy, even though it is being preserved. Because if, while they're out there on site, grading happens and those trees are impacted, then we would have to come back to UDC to alter that. And we don't want to have to do that. So even though they are preserving trees, we're asking for the 0%. So here's the fun numbers. So gross area site is 144,933 square feet. Their NUFA is 116,017 square feet. The existing tree canopy on site, there's 21,246 square feet, which is about 18.3% of NUFA. This is American elms, more water species, again, because of that ravine in the middle, some cedar elms, and then unprotected species. The required preservation would be 5,312 square feet. The required tree canopy for this site, because of significant trees on site and that mitigation Instead of being just the standard 30, it's 34.9% required, so 40,460. They are providing 42,000 square feet, so 36.2% of the NUFA. Any questions? Oh, staff is recommending approval.
So if you reduce that preservation from 15 to 0, the trees that they are preserving still have to be protected during construction?
So they are proposing this with this preservation. So yes, those trees will be protected, but the 5% wouldn't apply, and we'd be able to alter it administratively instead of having to come back to UDC.
Aren't there urban forestry requirements for how you preserve and mark off trees? And so if we take that 15% away, are they still required to do all of those things?
Yes, because they are showing on-plan preservation. So the on-plan preservation, they'll be held to that. But by allowing the 0% instead of the 15%, we will be able to administratively change that percentage and make sure they still comply in the end, because y'all lock in that total amount that they have to provide, and you lock in what is allowed to be removed.
So if we reduce from 15 to 0%, they're still locked into this plan, and
Yes.
this is the plan that will be submitted for permit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is this on the south or the north side of 287 in Mitchell?
It's the north, so northeast.
Northeast, okay. Right there on the corner, 287 and Mitchell Boulevard.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What are the species? You said
American elms, cedar elms. I think there's a couple pecans.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Is the applicant here to speak?
Yes, Laura's here.
Welcome.
And sorry, I didn't get your pretty rendering up.
Good morning. My name's Laura Presley. I'm a resident of Fort Worth, and I'm the landscape architect for this project with Kimley Horn. I'm happy to answer any questions. Speaking to the preservation, so our goal is to preserve the trees that are shown. We're still working through our drainage study with City of Fort Worth, and so that's part of why we wanted to go for 0%, is because if in order to meet the City of Fort Worth's requirements with our drainage study, we have to expand our grading limits. We didn't want to have to come back to y'all and ask for another change to the variance. We wanted to be as proactive as possible with y'all.
Thank you. Any questions from? All right, thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? All right, thanks. We'll close the public comment portion for our discussion.
I mean, it seems to me these are, it's pretty smart to not count on those trees making it through construction, just because if they are going to have to change any of the drainage, they're not going to survive. There's a good chance they won't survive. There's a good chance they won't survive this summer. Those are water-loving species that are falling apart as we speak. I probably have 3 calls about American elms that are dropping limbs. So I think for me, it seems like a smart, they're overplanting. If we do get that extra 5% that does survive through the variance or through the grading changes, then that's just gravy on top.
Yeah, and the trees, because we aren't really marking them for preservation, they aren't in that 36% provided.
Yeah. So you're planning 36% coverage, and then there might be an additional up to 5%.
I think it's even more than that. It's close to the 15.
Yeah.
I think we were a little over 15, closer to 17. Whenever we were first looking at it. But again, if that drainage moves any, I mean, you know how I work with people like that. As far as if they're encroaching, then if they're using an arborist, and they can get signed off on, because no matter what, if they say it's going to be preserved, they have to plant it back at 5 times if it fails. And that's because of the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver.
A second.
Can you clarify at what percentage?
Oh, at 0%.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Commissioner Harrier.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Harrier to grant this, reducing the 25% tree preservation requirement to 0%, and a second by Commissioner Moss. Commissioner Carr?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner DeBose?
Aye.
Chairman Benner?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Halliday?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
And Commissioner Harrier.
Aye.
It passes 8-0. Okay. So the next one, I had another flub on my agenda, so we're just going to blame it on being out for 2 months. So for the second one, UDC case 2026-191. The actual address is 6250 West Bailey Boswell Road. It was mapped correctly. This is UFC 260177. It also is E Neighborhood Commercial. The owner is Boas Holding, our Maloof Boat Club, and again, Laura Presley with Kimley Horn is the agent. They are asking as well for a waiver to reduce the 25% tree preservation requirement to 0%. I can go the right way. Okay, so yes, it's the one that was on the agenda as 5600 Park. Yes, my mistake on the agenda, sorry. Yeah, 5600 is just off the page, but again, noticed correctly and all of that, it's just on the agenda incorrectly. So this parcel is at the corner of Boat Club Road and Bailey Boswell Road. This is a 2024 aerial of the subject property, and as you can see, there are single-family homes flank on the north and the east side, then Boat Club along the west. That's a school over there. I'm not sure what school it is. So this is a rather large property that has 9 parcels total. For our numbers, we are only looking at the build out of 4 of the parcels, and the other parcels, the other 5, whenever they come through, we'll have to meet the 30%. So just know that going through all of this, it's only phase 1. Perfect. So this is the existing trees on site. If you notice, there's a lot more green than there are X marks. The reason that is because those are all unprotected species. I went out and looked, hackberries, mesquite, some gumbamellias, all really nice, short, shrubby trees. But all of the X's and what we are here to ask for a waiver on are all Chinese pistache. Gareth is, of course, nodding his head because whenever I saw that, I was like, what? Why? Chinese pistache is a native adaptive, as we call it. People plant it. We encourage planting. but you don't usually find it on a vacant site. And since this case, I have now gotten 2 other Kimley Horn cases that have more Chinese pistache on them. So if you kind of look at it, it's along the roadside, which makes sense, and it's along the fence lines, which again makes sense. Chinese pistache, fruit, birds, spread. So these are all volunteer species. I would have bet money that this site only had unprotected species on it until you actually go out there. And it was a little frustrating because I walked all into it and then looked at the map and realized I should have just driven along the road because I could have found it really quickly. So that's why we're here. And that's also why y'all haven't seen as many cases from me, even though it seemed like you have. Since the ordinance update with the unprotected species, it's really cut down the number that we've had to bring to UDC. So for this build out, Caleb just walked up and said that the gas station here is not fully planted out. So the numbers we have are just for along this back entry, lot 8, lot 7, and lot 4. And then this is detention. So we do have an artificial lot in place. They are proposing for these 3 lots, 72 large canopy trees and 3 small canopy trees. So I went ahead and, so for our gross site for these, it's 551,670 square feet. Their NUFA is 426,742 square feet. The existing tree canopy, because it's only protected species, only those Chinese pistache, 3,828 square feet, so 0.9% of NUFA. Their required preservation would be 957 square feet. Their required tree canopy is 128,023 square feet. So again, that 30% of NUFA, no significant trees on site, so no additional preservation needed, or planting needed, sorry. Provided preservation of 0, and their provided tree canopy is 144,300 square feet, so 33.8% of NUFA for these proposed lots, and again, those other lots would have to meet at least the 30%. So even more trees will come, and we'll hold them to that, not have to bother you all again. So yeah, that's all for staff comments. We recommend approval because it's just random Chinese pistache that happened to pop up.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Comments? Okay, is the applicant here to speak? Welcome back.
Great to see you all again.
Long time no see.
Again, my name's Laura Presley. I'm the landscape architect for this project. We also have the civil engineers here and the developer here if y'all have any questions for them. One thing to note is, like Jacqueline mentioned, we have these existing trees along that right-of-way, but City of Fort Worth is expanding that right-of-way, so we have some dedication and then some sidewalks as part of that project. So that's what's inhibiting our ability to preserve trees along that street frontage, is our grading to meet that City of Fort Worth project and make sure that it's aligned from private side to public side. And then we're also providing a pedestrian connection on the north side of the site. So we have some grading constraints balancing that butter turn drive up at the top, having a pedestrian sidewalk from that connection, but also the pedestrian sidewalk on the south side, and making sure that grades meet in the middle while still providing an accessible site. We've aimed to propose trees in as many places as possible. You'll see there are some islands that don't have trees due to vehicular circulation, so making sure that we're not blocking stop signs or inhibiting drivers' ability to see pedestrians in crosswalks. So those are intentionally empty in order to provide safe vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site because we want to make sure that everybody's able to get in and out of their cars safely. If y'all have any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion for discussion by the commission.
Pretty cut and dry. Yeah, I would approve the waiver. I'll make a motion to do so.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the reduction from 25% to 0% from Commissioner Harrier, and a second from Commissioner DeBose. Sure. Commissioner Carr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner DeBose?
Aye.
Chairman Benner?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Halliday?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
And Commissioner Harrier.
Aye.
Okay, pass 8-0. Thank y'all.
Thank you, then. Can everyone see me? Maybe I should go up a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna pull it. All right. Good morning. So I have two cases, and they're very similar. And let's get started. So, good morning, Commissioners. This case before you is UDC case 2026-137, located at 5812 Eastland Street in Council District 5. The applicant is Reza Saif, Hoovering Estate, Inc. The property is zoned urban residential, or UR. The request is for a certificate of appropriateness for a waiver of the UR pedestrian scaled lighting requirement. How do I go to the next one? Okay. Is it this? Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. Thank you. The applicant is proposing a new 2-story duplex. Each dwelling unit will contain 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms. The property is located along Eastland Road, west of South Cravens Road and south of East Berry Street. The surrounding area includes UR development with MU2 zoning to the north and FR zoning further west. The Pacific waiver request is related to the pedestrian scare lighting, like mentioned before. Under the UR standards, pedestrian scare lighting is required within the roadside street, tree, and furnishing zone. The applicant is proposing to locate alternative lighting on the private property rather than within the required public streetscape area. The UR standards require pedestrian scale lighting along this public way, and I'm just going to show you guys. This is the site as its kind of recent location. You could kind of see that there are some drainage. There's a drainage ditch in front of the property. And you could see that the conditions of the site as it stands there. The standards for this particular site will require the applicant to put 1 pedestrian scale lighting towards the front. As you can see, there is a mature tree there. We have talked about maybe using that as their street tree to comply with that standard. The project has been going through several previous applications and review. The building permit application, they do have one out. It was on August 28th of last year that they applied for their building permit. The permit was placed on hold because there are outstanding UR design standards requirements that the project had not completed and required conceptual review. The applicant also had a previous UDC case number, so I don't know if that was like You guys might recognize it or not, but it's UDC case 2026-075, and that was submitted in March of 2026, but it was later voided at the applicant's request. This current one is the one that was applied back in May 2026. I don't know if it's working anymore. I think the battery's out. Okay. I'll just use the keyboard. The important part is to mention is that the site plan that you guys are seeing here is a revised submittal that they submitted, but it's not entirely complete. Like I mentioned before, they were planning on putting some alternative lightings that we have not seen yet. And it's not really reflected in this site plan. So staff has not received that update quite yet. With that said, and there is also some other UR standards that have not been dealt with. So with that said, at this time, staff cannot determine whether additional waivers would be required and necessary until the applicant actually submits those revised plans. A continuance is what we're recommending. It would give the applicant additional time to complete the site plan revisions, address the UR outstanding standards, and incorporate any proposed alternative lighting. Also identify additional areas where waivers may be necessary. And then also will give us staff time to review it properly before it returns to the commission. So again, with that said, staff is recommending a continuance for this case, UDC 2026-137. And that concludes the stuff.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
What was the zoning of the property just to the north?
To the north is
commercial property?
MU2.
MU2?
Yes.
Do they have any, like, right-of-way improvement requirements as part of their?
Yes, sir.
I'm
Yep.
looking at Google Earth or whatever, driving it, doesn't look like there's any improvements on the backside
Well,
of that commercial building.
So this whole area was rezoned as a council initiated rezoning to the Lake Arlington plan. So currently, these properties were already there. So those things were before the rezoning. Eventually, the plan is to have that whole area revitalized and changed. And that's why there's UR in that whole block. So I don't know if I could, so this whole area is like UR, and then this whole swath right here is MU2. And then there was a case recently with McDonald's of that MU. This was that right here. And then all of this in the front here is MU as well. So it's part of the revitalization plan. That whole area is just like MU, UR.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here to speak?
No.
Don't see anybody here, anybody else here to speak in favor? Is anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, thank you. We'll close the public comment portion.
Thank you.
Tend to lean toward staff recommendation on this one.
I move to approve the continuance.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Chair Bennon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Carr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner DeBose, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Halliday, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Moss, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. That is 8-0. All right, so the next one, very similar, but different situation. This is,
Francisco Vega, I'm sorry. Just for the records, we notified the applicant, we have worked with the applicant is not present, just in case there is some sort of, they want to not accept the UDC's decisions or anything. Just for the record, again, the applicant is not present in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. For the prior case, the current case or prior case?
That's for the prior case.
Prior case, thank you.
So now we're at UDC 2026-149. This is located at 213 South Roberts Cutoff Road in Council District 5. The applicant is Ruth and Randall LLC. There is a correction on the staff report, so just making sure it is Ruth and Randall LLC and Jenna McKeever. And I'm sorry if I missed your name. Is that good? Okay. They're requesting a certificate of appropriateness for a waiver from the urban residential or the pedestrian scale lighting requirement, same as last. The proposal is for construction of a new duplex on a 0.22 acre site. The specific request before the commissioner is to have the pedestrian lighting not on within the roadside street furniture. Instead, the request is to require their lighting within the private property. And then also they're proposing to do wall-mounted sconce lighting on the building, as well as provide pathway lighting of their sidewalk that leads to the public sidewalk. The property that you're looking at right now was rezoned in 2017 as part of a larger multifamily development to the east, as you can see on the screen. The development ultimately did not incorporate this particular property, and the property remained zoned UR. And just to let you know, the future land use for this area is also UR, so it is in the scope and field of what the city is wanting to go towards. In April 2026, the applicant submitted the building permit applications for the proposed duplex. During the permit review, staff advised the applicant that the property was subject to the UR development standards. The applicant subsequently worked with staff and had made several revisions to the site and building design. The initial proposal had several areas that did not comply with the urban residential standards, including parking location setbacks, building configuration, and frontage treatment. Through coordination with staff, and the applicant has subsequently revised the proposal. Their current design moves the parking towards the rear, adjusts the building placement, and modifies the building elevation. It adds landscaping and material changes and improves the building relationship to the street and surrounding neighborhood. At this point, the applicant is proposing to comply with the applicable urban residential standards, with the exception of the pedestrian scale lighting requirement, which is why they're here today. These are just the surrounding areas of the neighborhood as it is today. You just get the idea of what the neighborhood looks like. So just a reminder, the whole point for urban residential is that threshold between like single family to more high dense multifamily. It is also to highlight the pedestrian walkability, connectivity, the quality of the streetscapes, architectural diversity, and range of housing types. The required pedestrian scale lighting is one of that components that helps with that achievement and all the goals with UR. We recognize that the proposal alternative lighting can provide pedestrian illumination and can support the overall intent for the urban residential. The applicant has incorporated lighting into the building facade along the pedestrian connections between the duplex entrance and the public sidewalk. These improvements would remain on private property and would be maintained by the property owner rather than the city. There is one important consideration with the waiver. Staff did not identify any physical site constraints that would prevent the applicant from installing the required pedestrian scale lighting in the public right-of-way. Specifically, the site does not appear to have any like utility conflicts, mature trees, or grade condition, or other identified impediments that would make the installation infeasible. The applicant is already proposing to install a sidewalk which would handle the grade in the front. So staff believes that there's an opportunity to achieve the intent of the lighting requirement without requiring the exact standard lighting fixture of the location. We do prefer to maybe use something different that was presented, and I know that the applicant this morning submitted the alternative, so they are trying to also change the lighting that you're seeing here, and they'll be presenting that right after this. They have other lighting that you guys could look at in a different design, and they'll talk on that. So with that said, staff recommends approval with conditions of the requested waiver. The condition would require the applicant to continue working with staff on an alternative lighting solution that include at least one pedestrian scale light on the private property that illuminates the public sidewalk and wall-mounted sconce lighting on the front facade. Staff believes this approach maintains the intent of the urban residential standard lightings while recognizing the site's context. And just one more thing to add. If the commissioner approves the waiver, staff recommends that the approval will be understood that is specific to this development. And I know that this is going to start a precedent for that area, and that's a big concern. So we just want to make sure it's just specific for this situation, and that we understand staff understands the implementation if you approve this waiver.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Approval with conditions, that they come with lighting that is more to the pedestrian scale lighting that we want for the district. So it won't be, the location is what we're trying to compromise on. We're saying that you could put it in your private property. However, we want it to be pedestrian scaled. Like, we want it to look like it belongs and it's supposed to be highlighting the public sidewalk. So that is our main concern. And then we also would suggest that they put some wall sconce lighting to also kind of go beyond the requirement, just to make sure that they are still doing the intent of UR, which is the maximizing the connectivity. They will be the only one in the block to have the sidewalk and the street trees at the moment, but we do know that the future is intending to be urban residential.
And what's the logic for not putting it within the right-of-way, but putting it on private property? Is that just to avoid like a SSIP or some sort of
The applicant has applied for the SSIP program.
Okay.
I don't think, from what I know, you would have to ask the applicant. They're not opposed to that. We were just looking at it from a different perspective, and it's really up to you guys. It could go either way.
Okay.
One more quick question, but approving it as it is right now would put the maintenance requirement of the fixture on the owner or the property owner?
Yes.
So that would mean they could potentially just not keep it up if we approve?
It's on private property, but if it's, I'll let legal talk to that.
If it's on private property, I mean, we don't necessarily have any authority to basically say, yeah, you need to maintain that light on your private property. So while we would like to, obviously, you know, at best we would send like a courtesy letter of some sort, but there would be limited enforcement of that if it's on private property.
But the current development trajectory of that neighborhood is one that would imply that there would be more development of this type in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
That is correct.
All right, any other questions for staff?
I have one question for legal. If it's in the right of way, do that give you some control?
See, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
it
right.
would- yeah. Anything in our right of way, yeah, we have some authority over it. So.
And I have a question. How far are we from the installation on the public space versus the right-of-way? I don't know if there's any information about that. Do I need to
You ask that
restate
again.
question?
Yes, yes, please, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I didn't realize you were, I was looking at the board. How far are we being presented with the
Yeah, so right now, like I mentioned, I'm not sure if there's any site constraints. This is what I see currently. I will let the applicant speak on any site constraints that they're or, you know, to that point. We're not entirely sure. It is only one pedestrian light that would be required based on the width of their lot and where they're placing it. But I'm gonna let them talk on the reasoning why they are not putting the pedestrian light. But I also like to mention that the Margaret has left a comment. I know you guys have that sheet. That is for this case. They are wanting to put. I believe they said they want to approve with the condition that the lighting within the private property is appropriate. I believe.
And I have a concern of the discussion that I've heard, that it's up to the applicant to continue maintenance. So if they decide in the future, or the rest of the neighborhood, since this is starting a precedent, it could just be, you know, why even bother?
So
Instead of requiring it to be in the right of way.
to be clear in terms of the, sorry, in terms of the precedent, urban design commission decisions do not set precedent. So if someone next door wants to come in for a ped light, wherever, they have to come back to UDC, come back, and then UDC would consider that on a case-by-case basis.
Let's invite the applicant to speak if they would like. Yeah, yep. Welcome. Please state the name, your name and the city in which you reside.
My name is Jay McKeever. Ruth and Randall, I'm the applicant. And so it's our understanding that the urban residential overlay, it affects 6 lots right there on Roberts Cutoff. And as we understood it, that was in place for the Sadie apartment, that they thought that that was going to be developed as part of that apartment complex at one point, because it doesn't extend, urban residential doesn't go all the way up Roberts Cutoff. It only affects 6 lots, and it's only on the east side of the street. So it's us and 2 neighbors on one side, 3 on the other. The pedestrian light and lantern would be a little bit weird looking, based on we will be the only, so we've got all single family homes, got more duplexes over along Athenia on the eastern side of the Peninsula neighborhood. Most of what we have on the western side of the neighborhood is all single family homes. As far as any maintenance of lighting, so what we've proposed, we've got we're going to put a sidewalk in along parallel with the road frontage, a sidewalk going up to the front of the duplex. There will be lighting along both sidewalks, along with some little bushes, and that will illuminate the sidewalk. There won't be really any room for a wall sconce from what we're seeing. So we're only going to have about 2 feet of wall. Right now it's a old cross-tie wall that will be improved. But it's also pretty expensive to do the pedestrian lighting, being the only one in the neighborhood. We were it was our understanding that, I don't know, mistake is the right word, but it wasn't intended, that overlay wasn't intended to apply to us originally. But we are willing to do all the UR requirements and have redesigned the kind of everything around that. We're just kind of getting into a little borderline on whether the costs make sense to continue to move forward. And the pedestrian lighting is kind of putting us right there on that boundary. This is one of the biggest reasons.
So you said you'll have lighting along the sidewalk. Outside of that, the sidewalk going to the front door, right? So you said?
That, and then we will have 4 they are pathway lights. They're 2-foot tall pathway lights along the sidewalk going parallel with the road as well. And those lights will be on the interior side of the sidewalk, 18 inches. So, and they cast a approximate 4-foot diameter lighting. So we will be lighting the sidewalk up pretty good the whole way along the road frontage, or along Roberts Cutoff and up to the house.
And you said that that is only for your side of Roberts Cutoff? Is that correct?
The overlay doesn't apply to the other side of Roberts Cutoff.
Yeah, well, the requirement that they're saying that they're just doing it from, like, the sidewalk they're talking about is from their door to the public sidewalk that they're
Doing it on both.
proposing.
We're doing
Well, no, he was saying that the rule doesn't apply to the other side of the street. Is that what you were saying earlier?
Oh, yeah. So the zoning for that side is B zoning. So right now, let me go back to my PowerPoint slide.
So to the north and south of the 6 lots that he's referring to, it's Zone B.
Yeah.
Across the Roberts Cutoff is Zone A5. So yes, what he's saying is accurate in terms of where the pedestrian lighting is required. It's only going to be for his side, not the other side. That is Zone A5.
So that's 205 down to the corner, is that correct?
Almost to the corner.
Almost to
the
the
house on the corner is not UR either.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
That is true, yes, ma'am. Well, correct. It was kind of that, or we were going to try to maybe do a request for rezoning. That seemed like it was our understanding that the lighting, we thought we could handle it administratively at first and not have to handle it because we were under the impression that it shouldn't apply to us, that the urban residential was not intended, the overlay was not intended to extend all the way to Roberts Cutoff for some reason. I don't know the background on that. But it would be maintained by the private. That being said, they are going to be permanent fixtures, tower lights, so it would take a lot of work to uninstall them, I guess.
It sounds like had the apartment complex not been developed and the rezoning related to the apartment complex, this would still be zoned B or A5?
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
So this would not be required had that apartment complex not intended to use these 6 lots in the development, which at some point after the rezone, they decided not to use these lots.
Right.
What does the future land use map say? Does it remain A5? For all of the adjacent properties?
So,
B?
if you look at the staff report, if you guys have that, there is a zoning map on there that shows like the different zoning. I think that would help with the clarification of it. The future land use for that area though is urban residential. So eventually, if when, technically this place, they're demoing the single family in order to put the new duplex there. So if we get more and more development like that, that could be what you guys will look at in the future.
Can you show us that, that map? Because it's not in the staff report.
Yeah, I could give you. Is there a way to show this? It's on page 6 of that. staff report.
Broke down in song.
Yes, ma'am. So the house is no longer, the house is no longer there. We have a slide on the first page that shows the first, or the, I did too, I'm sorry.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, we got the zoning map up here.
Yeah.
That is a future road. So this is all going to be UR. Right
That
now,
is
this
currently you are.
No, this is future land use. So I'm going to switch
current.
it so you can see the current.
Currently and future, but the properties across the street are future use B.
Yes, that is correct.
So this entire district is not intended to be future UR. Only those lots that are
No,
currently
the-
UR
the
will remain
proper-
UR,
I'm ta-
and the future
yeah.
land use is not changing the use in this district. Or the intent is not for this future use to be UR. Across the street, we've just got like a little appendage that seems to be left over from, as Commissioner Benner said, from another project. It's not consistent with the rest of the neighborhood and really isn't consistent with the future use plan map. So in my mind, the applicant is correct and we should be, giving the full waiver, and it seems to be not consistent with the rest of the neighborhood.
was our understanding that future land use was A and B. We live in the neighborhood too, and we kind of watched this area pretty closely and didn't realize that our lot was UR when we bought it. But I don't know that I'm probably speaking in circles now.
Yeah, any other questions for the applicant while he's up here now? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Open up for discussion by the commission. I tend to agree with Commissioner Halliday.
Yeah, I think this is, it was rezoned as part of a larger project, left as sort of a leftover remnant of some zoning of a larger project. As you look up and down the street, I think B would allow duplexes, but would not have this requirement for pedestrian lighting. And so if it remains B and A5, this would sort of stand out as a small little pocket of yeah, and slightly different. You know, it doesn't feel consistent in the zoning.
Agreed.
So in terms of lighting requirements for a property of this type that they're putting in, that's pretty much entirely up to them at that point? Pathway lighting and front door lighting, basically?
In my experience.
Well, I mean, we still have to vote on it because we can decide, right? I mean, that.
There's
Correct,
no
yeah.
UR standard to require like architectural lighting or anything like that on the building. But you can take that into consideration in your decision to grant a waiver or not.
I'll make
Yeah,
well,
please do.
I'll make a motion to waive pedestrian lighting requirement.
Are you doing it with the condition?
No,
Approval with
no
conditions?
conditions.
No conditions?
I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Chair Bennon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Carr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed, how do you vote? Commissioner DeBose, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Halliday, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Moss, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, we have approval for the waiver of the pedestrian lights.
That's bad.
I know we're trying to get out here by noon. I need to take like a 2-minute break before we get to the next two, so.
Do make sure to eat the breakfast today. We're trying to up our food and beverage game.
there's Commissioner Reed.
Just crazy.
All right. For the next case, Chairman Benner, if it's okay, I'd like to go to case number 6 for the new cases, 900 West Magnolia. I think it'll be good to do that case. It'll be a little bit simpler, and then we'll do 1329 May. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Right now, we're going to discuss UDC 2026-192, which is located at 900 West Magnolia Ave. The applicant's requesting a certificate of appropriateness for a kind of building sign in the near south side form-based code district with a waiver from the signage standards to allow 2 kind of building signs on a facade where only 1 kind of building sign is allowed. So for a little bit of background, this building is a 2-story building right on West Magnolia. It's a medical office building. There's a lot of them within that district. And they're doing a tenant change from Baylor Scott White Family Medicine to START Dallas Fort Worth, which is a partnership between One Oncology and the Center for Cancer and Blood Disorders. And START provides early phase cancer oncology trials to patients at the center of, at centers across the United States. So some pretty important work. So looking at the site, this building is located directly on West Magnolia, bless you, which is designated both a primary street and a main street according to the near south side regulating plan. The applicant is proposing a 63.6 square foot kind of building sign. On this facade, the allowable sign area is up to 280 square feet given the facade length. And the sign has 2 different components. One is an illuminated channel letter component on a raceway, which you see on the left, that says START with this kind of logo in the middle. And then the other part that says Dallas Fort Worth is non-illuminated reverse channel letters, 1.5 inches deep, stud mounted, that identify the location. Now, on this site, the primary building entrance is on the north, and this is on the south facade. The south facade is the one that runs along Magnolia, but the building entrance is on the north on Magnolia Green Drive. There are a couple doors on this facade, but they say very clearly staff only, not a public entrance. So I can't count any of those doors as a public entrance. Here's a close-up. Here's some detail of the channel. Now, here's a picture of the current facade. There's kind of 3 parts to the facade, one on the left, one in the middle, one on the right. The middle is set back a little bit. It has a white masonry block in a stacked pattern, and then on the sides, you see a kind of reddish brick with a running bond. And on the left, you see there is a Gastroenterology Associates of North Texas sign that is existing and will remain there. So this Baylor Scott White one is currently there. That's being replaced with this START one. So they're seeking a waiver for a similar style sign, similar condition, similar location, generally similar size. And just for a little bit of context, within the near south side, there are a number of other buildings that also have multiple kind of building signs. You see them in the 2 to 3 story range. Here's one at 1106 Alston Ave, and here's one at 1236 West Rosedale. So it's a relatively common condition. The standards still limit kind of building signs to 1 per facade. So should an applicant need to request multiple kind of building signs, it has to come in front of UDC, which is a mechanism to kind of control the proliferation of these kind of building signs, make sure we're not allowing for over signage. So given the above, staff is recommending that the request for a certificate of appropriateness for a kind of building sign in the near south side form-based code with a waiver from the signage standards to allow 2 kind of building signs on a facade be approved.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
No.
I don't think so. Is the applicant here to speak if they would like to?
Applicant is here.
Welcome. Please state your name and the city in which you reside.
Hello, my name is Paul Santoyo. I'm from Dallas, Texas, with the sign company Artographics. This is just a sign swap, where there's one existing for Baylor Scott and White that we're going to swap with this one. And any questions you have, just let me know.
Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition of this case? No? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion. Our discussion seems pretty straightforward.
To me.
I second.
All right, we have a a motion from Commissioner DeBose to approve the second Crown Building sign on the facade, and a second from Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Carr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner DeBose, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chairman Benner, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes, how do you vote? Commissioner Hughes, how do you vote? Commissioner Halliday, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0. So you're getting some speed. Get us a little momentum going to our last case here of the day. And I think this is going to be a good one, a rich one. UDC 2026-131. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for 6 townhomes in the near south side, T4 General Urban District, with 4 waivers. Waiver from the minimum roadside width for new construction standards to allow a minimum roadside width of 5 feet 6 inches where 10 feet 6 inches is required. Waiver from the street tree planting requirements to allow no street trees along West Morphy Street where street tree planting should be placed 15 to 35 feet apart on center. Waiver from the pedestrian light requirement to allow no pedestrian lights along West Morphy Street where pedestrian lighting shall be within the roadside street tree furniture zone. And waiver from the pedestrian scale garage orientation standards to allow residential scale garages fronting public pedestrian space where garages shall be accessed from the alley or rear drive or shall be detached and located at the rear of the site. So there are 4 waivers. A lot of them are connected to the garage location, just to be very to the point on this. I'm going to walk you through some of the site. There's also some interesting things happening with the site and some interesting development within the neighborhood that's important to take into consideration and context when looking at this waiver. So it's zoned NST4. This is a bit to the west of JPS, just a couple blocks, and about a block south of West Magnolia. So it's a very interesting location where there's a lot going on, a good opportunity to provide urban residential housing, given the proximity of those 2 things. As you can see here, the lot mostly runs east to west along West Morphy Street, but it is addressed to May. When this block was originally platted, this area was mostly single family or single family scale housing oriented towards May, and then the West Morphy Street was the block end of it. That's the way it was originally platted. And if you look at Google Earth from 20 years ago, similar to these houses here, it was kind of oriented like that. In 2020, the original single-family home that was on this lot was torn down sometime between 2005 and 2007. So it's been sitting vacant for almost 20 years. In 2026, the current owner purchased the property, and in conversations with them, they looked at a development that happened directly to their west, and they kind of looked at that and said, okay, this seems like a good development for this area. Let's continue some of that same built pattern and form to the east onto his lot that he was looking at. So that development to the west is what's known as the Morphy Street Townhomes, and it converted 2 different single-family scale lots that were facing South Jennings into 6 townhomes per lot with pedestrian entries and garage entries that faced West Morphy. The first phase, the north side of the street, was built in 2017, and the second phase, the south side, in 2022. That development didn't really include pedestrian improvements along West Morphy. In May 2026, the applicant brought their design in front of the near South Side Design Review Committee, and members raised concern about some of the lack of pedestrian improvements and challenged the applicant to think about how they could improve the public realm in their property and within the broader district. So the applicant revised their design and came back to the Near South Side Design Review Committee on July 28th, and with the proposal to plant some street trees and pedestrian lights south of West Morphe to try to mitigate some of those conditions and improve the pedestrian realm and enhance some of the existing pedestrian enhancements along May Street. And the Near South Side Design Review Committee was supportive of the work that they had done, and they're supporting this request. So looking at the proposal itself, the applicant is proposing these 6 townhomes along West Morphe. You can see here some of the new trees and pedestrian lights the applicant is proposing to plant to the south of West Morphe Street. Typically, we ask that these be abutting the property along the right-of-way. As you've heard multiple times today, this applicant's proposing to put them to the south of the street. And there is a tree and some ped lights along May. They're looking to enhance some of that with some additional plantings and illumination. One thing to note here is the right-of-way width. You have 38 feet of right-of-way, but only 18 feet curb to curb. So it's a pretty narrow street. It's not a street that you would necessarily want cars parking on the side. And honestly, for straight safety purposes, there probably should be a no parking on the street sign somewhere on here, because at 18 feet, 2 cars, a fire truck would not be able to get through here. And most of the right-of-way, about 14 feet, is south of the southern curb on West Morphe. So it's kind of disproportionately oriented to the south, which is part of the applicant's logic behind enhancing that southern right-of-way was, okay, there's more right-of-way space here. This is kind of the natural place for people to walk, just given the orientation of the street. So each townhome is 3 floors. The first floor consists of a 2-car garage that's parked in tandem, and 1 bedroom and a small bath. The second floor is the main living area and a 2nd bedroom. And then the 3rd floor is a 3rd bedroom as well as a balcony that is in the back. The 2nd floor, forgot to mention, also has a small balcony in the front. One quick note about these plans, the applicant has actually revised their plans since the staff report and since we did the presentation to account for their platting that they're currently in the process of, because there's going to be a 5x5 corner clip on the sides. That really doesn't impact much on the 1st and 2nd floor, but then on the 3rd floor, the unit you see on the left and the right will have chamfered corners along that 5x5. They're not going to seek an encroachment for that. So here's the facade on the north, or on the top is the north facade, what would be the back. But on the bottom is what you would see along West Morphe Street. The ground floor is white brick, and the upper floors are a Western lock standing seam, which is typically used as a roofing panel. They're trying to be innovative with some of their material usage on that. It is built almost to the property line to the south. The ground floor is about 2 feet 9 inches from the property line, and the upper floor is about 5 inches from the property line. They do have the required 5-foot pedestrian zone at ground level. And then just also one other thing about this, I mentioned this before, just given the context, this is very close to JPS. When staff did a site visit, I got to speak with someone who lived in the West Morphe Street townhomes, who was outside there working on his car. I asked him how he liked living in this product. He said he liked it a lot. He appreciated the proximity of the product to West Magnolia, to JPS. So they're really trying to cater for a lot of those medical professionals within the district. And try to address some housing needs that the city has. So here's the sides of the project, the alley side, and also the side facing May. Here's some site photos showing the site. You can also see some of the narrowness of the street. So the applicant is going to be removing these trees here that are along West Morphe Street. The site's basically a legal parking lot right now. So that's part of the applicant's intent of having the garages on the property to make sure that the cars stay off-site. Even though there is no parking requirement per the code, it's not within 250 feet of A5, but they're trying to allow the space for that to make sure that cars do not clutter the street, even though from the site photos you can see that there's a lot of people parking there today. On the west side of the alley, on the west side of the property, there is an alley that runs mostly north to south. Directly north of the property, there are some townhomes, and those townhomes are fronting May, and along the alley side, they have some parking for those townhomes, including angled parking. Here's the West Morphy Street townhomes. That were some of the inspiration to this project. You can see how they come pretty much right up to the right-of-way, and you don't see those pedestrian lights and street trees. So the applicant's looking to kind of continue some of this concept to the east of this site, but provide kind of a better product than what this was. You can see they have the rollover curbs and that sidewalk that runs right up to the curb line. I mentioned before that really the nexus of this is centered on the garages that front the right-of-way. The garages, it's about 40% of the lot is garage. So given that, when you factor in the curb aprons and everything like that, it makes it really tight and difficult to get in the pedestrian lights and street trees. It blocks some of the visibility. You see folks are having to use the mirrors as is. So the garages is what really kind of impacts the ability to have pedestrian lights and street trees. It would be a bit dangerous to have folks be backing up and not be able to see their cars as they move into the right-of-way. Given all this, staff is recommending that these requests for a certificate of appropriateness for 6 townhomes in the near south side with the following waivers: waiver from the minimum roadside width for new construction standards, waiver from the street tree planning requirements, waiver from the pedestrian light requirements, and waiver from the residential scale garage orientation standards be approved. And the applicant is here, well, the architect for the applicant is here to speak to this project as well. The developer was not able to make it today. And near south side's here as well.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe?
So that strip is not a parkway. Those projects were approved by the Urban Design Commission. I believe they were approved administratively. I'm not sure how that happened. It was before our time and before any staff who are currently here. Yeah, so I can't speak to exactly the process. We do have COAs on file for those projects, but they look to be administrative. In terms of the weeds, so I think that's something that just kind of came from some of the crack in the pavement. And what the applicant's proposing to do to mitigate that for the future is establish an HOA. I can't really enforce that on the design side of kind of where we are in the process, but yeah, that's the applicant's solution to address that long term.
Just a reminder for the commissioners to speak into the mic since we're broadcasting.
I have a question. Have y'all, y'all took in consideration, it's always one, it's always one. What if they decide to park on the side of the street, on both sides? Is the road wide enough for another car to get through?
No, it's not, and that's just the curb to curb.
Have they thought about, the outcome? Because you're gonna have some that want to.
One thing with this of placing the garages there and the curb cuts, it will greatly limit the likelihood that someone parks on the north side of the street. Because when we went there to the site, the fact that those garages are there, usually people don't park in front of the garages. Luckily, most folks are pretty decent and don't do that because then it prohibits someone from exiting the garage. But the curb to curb is 18 feet, so it is very narrow as is today. So we can certainly look into contacting TPW about no parking signs and talk to your south side about that. That's a little bit outside the scope of what we normally do, but I do think given the safety concerns of such a narrow right-of-way, that would be a prudent course of action.
I understand, but you're going to have one. Try it.
What I find is that it's a 2-car garage.
Yes, it's 2 cars in tandem.
And then they have 3, they have 3 people, like mom and dad and kids. Yeah, one's on the street.
Joe, you mentioned that this is in for replat currently?
Yes, it's in I think they did their preliminary plat. They have not finalized their final plat.
Okay. And is there civil engineering for the project, it looks like this site plan is sort of a basic, that right-of-way plan doesn't represent curb cuts or anything that we can actually see, and have a little bit of knowledge of the adjacent property and how that construction process went down, and what's represented here doesn't seem to be what will be constructed, particularly with regards to grading, stairs, entrances, if you see sort of the ramping that's happening from the street into those. And so I think that we'd like to probably hear from the applicant just about finished floors and how they intend to mitigate that across this site.
The applicant is here and can speak to that.
Awesome.
Any other questions for Joe while he's up here? All right, thank you. Welcome.
Want to talk to me? Yeah, my name is Jack Romai. I'm the architect of record for this project. I currently live in Arlington, but I lived in Fort Worth for 20 years before that. We will have to take curb cuts or rollover curb like the project adjacent to get in these garages. As far as the slope, because there is a approximately 3-foot slope on this street frontage here, we proposed, instead of the adjoining property having steps coming across the sidewalk, where that, you see a pilaster in the front elevation there? Can you zoom in on that? There's a pilaster, you see where the front door is? There's a pilaster right next there, 4 feet from that front door, and that pilaster will contain a light to light the street, for one thing. And there's there's a simple handrail to the other side, but behind that post is where we plan on putting steps, up to 3 steps to get into this house from the far corner. That's where we have the most slope.
Will all of the finished floors be level all the way across this thing? So one.
Second floor will be level across there. The first floor will go down as it goes down the street.
First floors will step as you go across the street. I think that was one of the main challenges.
I understand. Yeah, I think we should only have 2 risers at the worst case, we think. I've looked at the grade. I've been doing this for a long time, so I understand that aspect of it. But we don't have a civil engineer. Our client is, but we don't have a civil engineer doing that work just yet. That we're taking the right-of-way platting. Turns out that 5-foot visibility corner is also a right-of-way. So that's why we had to clip the corners, which you don't see in here. But the balcony will have a clip corner, and the 3rd floor will have a clip corner. Doesn't change the elevation very much.
You can see it there on the 3rd floor. That corner clip.
You said you've got 3 feet of fall across so each.
Approximately.
Yeah.
We're going to step down on the left-hand side. That first floor ceiling will be at 8 feet. To go down the street, it'll get to 9 or 9.5 feet.
So each one of those finished floors will be at a different elevation.
The far right-hand side. The project slopes. The site slopes from on that plan sign from high is on the left side and low is on the right side. That's why we decided to do what we did. We're just going to lower the first floor down as we go down the street. So we'll have a maximum of only 2 risers, and they will be perpendicular to the street, so there's no step will encroach on the sidewalk at all. And we have a landscape bed in front too, and the landscape bed and that light in the pilaster, those will be HOA controlled, so the light will be on all night. Now there's be a light on that front porch that the owner of the property can turn on, but the pilaster light, which are going to be fairly bright light, 800 to 1,000 lumens, so it'll light up that whole sidewalk from property to property. At this point, no. We're still in the early process, but we've got my partner and I, Joel, have talked to our client, the owner, about this, and said the only way to make this work is to have an HOA control that front and the building exterior. I do this. I've done a lot of townhomes, and that's commonly done.
Is it not fee simple townhome? It's fee simple townhome?
Yeah. The platting of the lot is 1 lot per townhome.
How do you do a HOA if it's fee simple? Is there a shared?
The whole property, and that's commonly done. I've got dozens of townhome projects across the Metroplex that have that same situation.
What's the shared ownership?
I don't know. That's something to be determined.
No, meaning that they're each fee simple lots, so the townhomes are wholly owned within property lines. What is the shared, there's a right-of-way?
It would be for the regulation of the private property. Like an HOA could, ding you for not mowing your lawn. It'd be for not mowing your little strip of weeds.
Each of those little landscape beds will be irrigated and maintained by the HOA. Yes, it'll be on all night.
Thank you, Scary. I'm looking right at you, so I forgot about the microphone. I apologize. What is the purpose for, in your opinion, of having the bright light on contiguously all night long?
Like that sidewalk that's on the townhome side of the street. So that light is going to be bright enough. It's only going to be this tall, so the light will be down here. And it'll spread across the sidewalk, like the previous client that had the
And
pedestrian lights. But this is
not to do your job, but I believe your intent was to mitigate or offset the lack of required pedestrian lighting. Typically, we would require ornamental pedestrian lighting within the right-of-way. There's no, parkway for that here, so in lieu of that, to achieve a similar foot candle effect and illumination of the public right-of-way and the walkway, that 5-foot walkway that's gonna be in front, that's where those on-building lights come in.
Thank you.
Yeah, the street lights typically provide a minimum of 1 to 1.5 foot candles at the end of their light between the light poles, 6 or 7 foot candles at the base of a light pole. These lights that we're going to put in that polyester will do the same thing.
All right, thank you.
Are y'all relocating the power lines? Or is it communications, something along the front of this?
The power lines are there now.
Yes.
Those are going to have to go underground, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure exactly. We have to work with Encore to figure, I think it's Encore, to figure that piece out. But yeah, they're right there on the property line. So they're not in the way of the building, but they're so close to the building, we'd rather have them below grade.
Right. Okay.
Commissioner Hughes again. The planting that you're proposing, it doesn't appear that that space is owned by you or the owners of the land?
Yeah, it is actually on the property.
So do you own the street?
No, the landscape we're showing there on the plan is on the property. So you see the property line down there, and that's the landscape area right there. It's not large.
But didn't we show other planting in the area that was like across the street?
We're planning on putting trees across the street.
And so who owns that property?
That's city right away.
And so how will that be maintained?
Well, the 2 street lights that'll be on there will be maintained by the city. There's 2 trees on that same block, one in each corner, very near the intersection of May and Morphy, and one toward the alleyway behind the Willamette property there.
To address, I think, some of your concerns as well, the staff has challenged the applicant to make contact with the owner of that parcel to the south, and I know they've tried outreach. It's a national corporation that owns the parcel, so they're kind of working through the bureaucracy to have that conversation, so they keep that property owner informed, so that way when someone just goes there and starts throwing in ped lights and street trees, they're not like, what's happening in front of my property? So that's on the applicant to do that outreach and coordinate that.
Yeah, I've talked to WellMed Clinic there, but they say the building is owned by corporate WellMed. So I've been trying to get a hold of corporate, but it's taken a little bit of time to get them on the phone to talk about this particular piece of property.
Yeah, so maybe it's premature to just.
We're proposing doing that. We've got to talk to them to confirm it.
Okay.
But it is city property. So I don't know how that works exactly, but we'd like to get it done.
Yeah, and to your point too, you see here there's a 38 feet of right-of-way. It's disproportionately set to the south. About 14 feet of that is to the south. Ideally, when we're doing street planning and everything like that, it's right down the middle, and there's an even amount of right-of-way on both sides of the street. This is, I think, just because it's a more historical part of town, older platting, The curb to curb is disproportionately to the northern half, so that limits the right-of-way available to the north directly in front of their property. Per the near south side code, you still have to provide that parkway and sidewalk, that roadside width. So it either has to encroach onto your property or you have to be able to do it within the right-of-way. Those are your two options. And given the fact that this was a historically single-family lot, it's only 50 feet wide. It's not very wide or not very deep. So, you know, pushing that 6 feet into their property significantly decreases their amount of developable area. And I think they, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were trying to create some pedestrian space in the back on ground level for a little kind of patio garden area back there up here.
I see. Thank you.
To clarify on the planting on the south side, does the applicant have the right to plant there without permission of the owner of the property on the south side?
So we've checked with TDS and some of the folks like SSIP and those folks. It's a very unusual approach, but we can't find anything that would prevent it. Yeah, PARD has to approve the permit for it, for the street tree plantings, and then the pellets have to go through either SSIP or IPRC, the same as if it were directly abutting their property.
Sorry. Park and Recreation does not go through SSIP for tree plantings, so that doesn't work together. The way PARD will allow you to plant trees across the street, because it has happened around the city, is somebody has to agree to water those trees, and that's in the maintenance agreement whenever you're doing a city tree planting. So they would have to coordinate with the adjacent property owner, because that typically falls to that property owner. But if they want to supply that irrigation, supply that water requirement, then it's just coordinating with PARD Forestry.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Very good, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor? Thank you. Welcome, please state your name and the city in which you reside.
My name is Rachel Bradford. I'm representing Near Southside Inc. I reside in Fort Worth. So Joe did an excellent job covering everything, so I'm just going to reiterate a few key points from the perspective of our design review committee. The applicant did attend our design review committee twice, both in May and July. At the first meeting, the committee expressed concern with the residential garage's interruption of the pedestrian space and the lack of streetscape elements that created. So asked them to return after that first discussion and keep working on it, and to give an opportunity to develop a detailed streetscape enhancement plan, which is what you see today. The applicant did work to refine their plans and explore all available options, and the committee did feel comfortable after they returned with those revised plans, taking both the existing development pattern of the street into account and the compromises that were made to enhance the streetscape in a way that addresses the intent of the code as much as possible. So ultimately, the DRC was in support of all four waivers. I also did want to comment on the question regarding the street parking, and it is our intent as Near Southside Inc. Through our streetscape program to pursue those no parking signs that we were referring to earlier. We will initiate that conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more quick question, if you don't mind. Sorry, I was a little late on the trigger there. Were there any other options explored with not utilizing every square inch of the space? Potentially doing 4 units and then trying to set up a better pedestrian access point on the front and the sides of the development, and not going across the street and trying to compensate there for planting of trees? I'm just a little concerned the way this is all packed in there, and I understand the reference, but looking at figure 13 on the documents that were presented, that doesn't at least for me personally, kind of challenges my sensibilities of having a nice pedestrian streetscape, which I thought near South Side was very adamant about on many of our other projects. And I'm trying to figure out how we ended up in this situation. Could you explore that or explain that a little bit more?
I will say they're not the developer.
No, I know, but I mean, in terms of their guideline and direction on these projects so far, and most of the projects that we've evaluated over the last year or two that I've been here, is that we try to be very proactive about providing these streetscapes. And we're showing imagery from something that obviously is not doing that as an inspiration point. And I think we should probably be looking at making sure that other avenues were explored to give us the things that we're looking for, and utilizing that as a pedestrian, interacting. I mean, I see where you're coming from on maximizing everything, but the reality is there's no parking here. If anybody, and I don't know how this works, but if you have a barbecue at one of these places, nobody's going to be able to park within 4 blocks of your house. So there seems to be a disconnect here between what the design goals are typically for near South Side and what the final product is that's trying to be pushed here, and I'm a little concerned about that. And I was wondering if you could maybe make a couple of comments from the near South Side aspect of it and help us out and help us understand how we got to this.
Yeah, so I can't speak to, how the applicant explored other
Right.
options. I'll have to let them speak to that. Obviously, the streetscape was a priority for us, and balancing, the vehicular needs with that pedestrian experience was a high priority, which is why the design review committee pursued that conversation so heavily and asked the applicant to come back and address that.
Okay.
I can say that they did feel comfortable with the revisions that were made, and within the context of achieving the 6 units that were proposed, but I can't speak to if other
Okay.
design.
Well, then maybe we'll just have the architect come back and speak to that in more detail then. Sorry.
I have a question too. Are y'all familiar with Riverside and Glen Garden? Those homes that they built over there have the same kind of picture that I'm looking at. And I have church members over there, and I can't even get through there to pick them up because cars are parked on the side of the road, and ain't but one way through there. It ain't two. You can't get through there. I'm kind of like Commissioner Carr. It's going to be a problem if some folks decide to park in the front of these here townhomes.
So I think we do have the intent to pursue that no parking designation to help mitigate that issue.
And to your point in terms of the parking, it is 18 feet today, curb to curb. So like today, it's tight going by there, whether townhomes are built there or not. That tightness is going to remain. We can't have the developer move the curb in this case, or it's very unlikely that the city would change the curb for such a small scale project. So that 18 feet is what is there today and what is proposed to continue. To the concern and about surrounding areas, in discussing with the applicant too, who's not here, there is a lot of surface parking within pretty close proximity to that. So for that barbecue, that could help to alleviate some of that. But the applicant has not proposed any kind of shared parking agreement at this time. And then kind of recollecting some of the conversation from the near Southside DRC, I think the DRC also looked at it within the broader context. They looked at a street that was about 2 blocks in length, and really most of the pedestrian traffic is going to be oriented either north or south. And that was kind of what they were looking at. They're like, this is a relatively short street. It's not necessarily a big pedestrian thoroughfare because it is so narrow. And the applicant was trying to just figure out, okay, hey, JPS is here, cool area over here. I got a spot in the middle, and how can I try to maximize the zoning? And we talked with the applicant about the density of their development. There's no density limit or cap in the near south side. So that was all discussed, but the applicant felt strongly about kind of putting forward this proposal and moving forward with it.
Can I ask a question? Is morphine here, is it the same? It's the same width that is farther west, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Where it's like an alley, like.
It's very
when
narrow.
You're driving down it, it's one way, it feels like an alley. The trees that are planted down there, I love trees, but those poor guys are like between a rock and a hard place because of the overhead as well. So I'm just making sure that we're talking that same kind of width, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty consistent width. It's relatively narrow.
I share Commissioner Carr's concern. I had high hopes for the original development whenever it came in and was developed, and I am concerned to extend what has been developed here. There's precedent within the near south side for small streets that actually work. I mean, if you look at Oleander, it's a tiny little street that has trees. It feels, you don't want to drive on it, so only the people that are supposed to drive on it do. This is a really very interesting little pocket. I'm for a development here. I think that it's all in the details of how this thing gets executed, and we can't allow what was designed here. It didn't actually get fully designed. It didn't get designed down to the execution from the face of the building to the face of curb. I don't think that they've shown us that they can actually do that because they're not considering, we're seeing an elevation that shows everything straight. They haven't gotten into those minute details, and that's really how I would need to see all of that in order to feel comfortable actually saying that this thing can be done.
I will add, while we're presenting these waivers, particularly for the garages, their proposal is for 6 garages. You can also approve with conditions to find some kind of medium ground, because I think the garage is really the nexus that then triggers the lack of street trees, ped lights, and all those curb cuts. So you do have flexibility as a commission to think it's not just either black or white, yes or no. You do have the approve with conditions option too.
Can we put that on you to make sure that it gets done well?
Well, if you approve with conditions, you need to specify the conditions. So for instance, you can approve a waiver for just smack down the middle, like 3 garages as opposed to 6, and then they have to work through designing some kind of solution, and maybe they're able to make contact with the person to the south, and 1 or 2 of those townhomes is able to go from 3-bedroom fee simple to like a 3-unit apartment, provide some diversity of housing type within the parcel.
Is there an access easement on the backside of this lot through that parking lot, the Spice parking lot?
There is not.
There's not.
No, but there's a parking lot to the south, which is an MOB. So I would gander that most of the people who occupy the townhomes may live elsewhere, may drive elsewhere, so they may not need a parking spot until 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. when the parking lot to the south is mostly empty. There's also the parking lot to the southeast. There is a good amount of parking within the area, as well as the apartment to the northeast. You can see there the garage is mostly empty on the top level. So there is parking capacity within the general vicinity that could be absorbed elsewhere if they chose to reduce their off-site parking to 0.
Can the applicant confirm that these are for sale?
But if one of those were for sale, it could be an apartment unit of 3 instead of just a standalone single unit townhome, and then deed restrict it to the parking agreement for the parcel to the south, for instance, for parking. There's options there that you all have as commissioners that the applicant has to exercise. Unfortunately, the developer is not here today to fully flesh those out.
Another option is for us to continue to allow the developer applicant to testify. Is that correct?
There is an option to continue to allow them to testify. My advice would be to give them some direction in terms of what you want to explore within that time. So that way what comes in front of you next time, it further achieves what you guys want to see. and will help you make a decision.
I'd like to see a detailed drawing of the right-of-way from face of facade to face of curb that shows all of the curb cuts that they're proposing and, you know, detailed out with elevations of finished floors for interior and, you know, sort of how that will all get resolved.
Well, and I'd like to see the assumed planting on land that they don't own, that there's an agreement in place instead of just making an assumption. And then knowing that it needs to be maintained by the proposed HOA, which doesn't exist. A lot of it's premature.
I think they said that that was already allowed. There's a vehicle with the city, so it's on city property, so it would not be like on adjacent property owners' land. It would be in the right-of-way still.
The HOA would govern these plantings here.
But the trees, I think.
The trees, I'll use a different color. Here are within city right-of-way, so the city would maintain these trees, and they have to go through the permit approval process to plant what's in green.
So I have a question about hearing that individuals would need to take care of the watering.
That comment was about the individual property owners. So it's the person who owns the property to the south would have to care for, they had to figure out a way to irrigate these here.
Okay.
So Chair, could you please clarify if we're in a private discussion or if we're still open at this point? My memory is still fading.
Mine was too. We are, we're in the public right now. Yes, yes. Any other questions for Joe or the applicant? And forgive me, it's been a long morning, but is there anybody else here to speak in favor? Anybody else here to speak in opposition to this case? Okay, we will now close the public comment portion for further discussion by the commission.
I think this project needs a lot more work. And certainly a lot more clarification on the final execution on how it's going to be performed. And from a personal standpoint, I think there needs to be a little bit more effort given to providing more variation to the concept and opening it up a little bit better to actually accommodate the street and better functionality.
I agree.
Agreed.
It sounds like we can deny, we can continue with some guidance, but I can't make a motion, so.
I'll move for a continuance and ask that the applicant come back with more detailed streetscape plan and some details regarding finished floor elevations of the units, the individual townhomes, and the adjacent existing grades within Morphy Street. That's a long motion, sorry.
This is Commissioner Carl, second.
Before that is voted on, I just wanted to clarify, the continuance didn't provide a specific end date, so is it tabled, is it continued to the next scheduled UDC meeting?
Yes, that.
Okay. And Commissioner Carr, do you second that?
I do second that, thank you.
All right, we have a motion to continue to allow the applicant time to continue to better analyze and provide answers to the streetscape and particularly the finished floor level across the site. And that's a continuance for 1 month. That's made by Commissioner Halliday and a second by Commissioner Carr. Commissioner Carr, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner DeBose, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chairman Benner, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Halliday, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion to continue passes 8-0, and we are wrapped up right at 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Great job this meeting. We are adjourned. See you on hopefully a cooler September next month.
We'll follow up about October dates too, so everyone can check their calendars. Thank you.